right, welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as your money, and we know that. Welcome, Adam. Good to see you today.
Good to be here.
Well, we have an exciting topic today for the newbie investor.
Yep.
Or for the seasoned investor. I guess you could say either way, right?
Either way, yeah.
So we thought it was good to maybe go back to basics and really do a topic on budgeting.
It is something that comes up all the time in our meetings. I just was dealing with this last Thursday, so just a couple days ago, and same. Just it's amazing what people don't do when it comes to money coming in.
Yeah, right. I mean, you could have a Fortune 500 company, and it runs on what? A budget.
Yep.
But then you take the average household, and people look like you have three eyes when you say,
Sure.
hey, do you have a budget?
Right.
Right. And I think that's, maybe important that we talk about the basics of a budget and maybe some ways that people can do a budget, give them some different options.
Yeah.
And you really have to find what works for your household. I mean, there's no one way.
Yeah. And, again, as we were saying, a lot of times when we do our reviews, we'll say, well, money comes in and money goes out. I paid these bills. And if there's anything left over, then I'll do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But when you have a discipline of a budget, you know where every dollar is going.
Yeah, you know what's left over.
Yep.
It's not if anything.
Right.
All right, well, let's get into it. It's your time.
Your money.
I'll let you do the honors.
All right.
So, let's just talk about the blatant why, right? I think a lot of people understand the why, but the problem is that people don't implement it.
Right.
And I don't know how you run a household if you don't know what your cash flow is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know where money's going.
Yep.
Right. And we see it a lot of times where not having the budget creates the debt issue.
Yep.
Right. Creates the credit card debt issue, especially nowadays with interest rates being a lot higher. It's harder for clients to get out of debt. Mm-hmm. And it's a never ending cycle. They're trying to pay off their debt and they're kind of behind the wave, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. And we want the budget to be something that gets them in front of the wave, so that they know what their expenditures are, they know what their additional money is, and then they can apply it to what? Save for other goals, other causes, or things along that line.
Sure. Yeah, and a lot of times the purchasing power that that people feel that they have is really not really what they have. And so, like you said, you end up utilizing the credit cards and, you should ask yourself the question, is it in my budget this month? Or is it at this time?
And I think understanding that it is an issue in the American culture that psychologically we have to have things now.
Right.
And you can't have a budget conversation without talking about financial responsibility and delaying gratification some when it comes to purchasing items.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, too many times, people are impulsed and they see something on sale and they say, "Oh, I saved $300." And my response always is, well, did $300 go into your bank account?
Right.
Or did $500 come out because it was $800?
Right.
Right. And that common word of savings, it plays a psychological game on you.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
I can go and buy 400 things and save $100,000, but at the end of the day, be dead broke with no
right.
no money at all
Yep.
to show for it.
Yep.
So I mean, just psychologically understanding that, hey, if I want to get something, I should budget it.
Yeah.
And put money monthly away or quarterly away or use a payment coming in to purchase it when I'm ready.
Right. So, you know what? Let's just kind of, I'll ask the question, right? How does somebody start and make a budget? Where do they start?
Yeah, first is understanding the different types of budgets or things that people can get out there, right? Mm-hmm. I brought some props, actually. So the old school way was the old magic envelopes, right? For some people, this still works. But ultimately, what did the envelopes require you doing? Going to the bank after you got your pay, removing cash from the bank, bringing it home, sitting at the kitchen table and putting into each envelope.
Yeah.
This is my utility bill, this is my food bill, this is my gas bill. But in a more digital society like we are today, I don't know about you, how many times do you go to the bank and get cash?
Virtually never.
Right? I mean, I know where the bank locations are.
Right.
I probably couldn't tell you any teller's name,
right?
Which you used to know. When I was a kid, I would know who the teller was at the local bank or whatever. But nowadays, everything's credit card, right? Or debit card, which we'll get into in a second. But, so for some people, the envelopes may work.
Yeah.
You know, typically the older person that still wants the cold hard cash, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You know, change is never good in these things. You get, you know, but in reality nowadays it's all digital.
Yep.
Right. So there's some great apps out there. We're not going to name any specific one, but I would encourage listeners to look around and try different apps and see which ones are the best for them.
Yep.
And then also credit card companies now, they have a lot of that built into their services. So you're already paying for it through fees or whatever else. But I know my credit cards, I can go in and I can itemize expenditures at Citgo, at Walmart, at ShopRite, or whatever it might be, into groceries, consumer goods, gas, you know, and it'll automatically separate all my purchases as I buy them on credit or debit card.
Easy way to see things.
Right?
Yep.
And I think the next step then is to print it out monthly. Right? Because a lot of times people don't look at it at all or at the end of the year.
Well, and you brought up a point too. You know, a lot of times people, you know, will say, "Oh, what do you know?" There seems to be a gap between where the money is coming in, and we see that there's certain amounts of going out for expenditures, but then there's sort of this question marks of what are you spending $500 a month on?
Yeah.
And it's an easy way to see, oh, I'm spending it on X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the apps, the nice thing about the credit card companies is that you can see trends, right? And you know, it's funny because money does only go one or two places. Either you save it or you spend it.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
There's no other option really. Well, federal government, I guess you would say, is the third option.
Yes, the
but,
taxes.
But there really is no other option.
Yeah.
So, you know, and if you're doing a save to spend account, like a lot of clients say, oh, I'm a great saver. I save $300 a month. I say, how long have you been doing that? They say, oh, the last 10 years. I say, what do you have in your savings account? And they say $500.
Right.
Well, I know it's a save to spend account.
Right.
That's not really a savings account. It's not an emergency fund account, right?
Yep.
But you can look and say, oh, wow, on month I average $50 a month at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the nice thing about those apps is you can make the hard decision and say, you know what, I'm going to make coffee in the morning before I go. Or maybe I'm going to go to Cumberland Farms and get it for 99 cents.
Right.
Versus Dunkin' or Starbucks or I don't know. Is there anybody more expensive than Starbucks when it comes to coffee?
I don't think so. I was thinking actually that one coffee is $50 there, I think.
Yeah, probably. We should start a trend. We should like be the most expensive coffee out there and create a trend of people going there for $108 without cream.
It's funny because people will say, I got to have my Starbucks. And those are not, they're not inexpensive coffees. It doesn't mean that they're not good, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, there's those people that, a lot of times it's spending habits, right? Where, well, habitually I get in the car, I stop at Starbucks and window, and it's on my way to work, and I grab my coffee and I go into work. And, you know, you do that every single day or 5 days a week.
Yeah. And what, you know, and I want listeners to understand, we're not saying don't buy Starbucks.
Right.
But what we're saying is in a budgeting standpoint where you're trying to get a household budget under control, trying to get on the front side of the wave, right, of debt and insecurity and all this other stuff, is perhaps maybe you want to postpone it for 3 to 6 months and know where your other money's going.
Yeah.
Right? So that later you can incorporate it into your budget appropriately where necessary. So the apps are very good. I just went online and just typed in a Google Sheets. I said budgeting worksheet. So here's another option, right, that listeners can do.
Yep.
And this is just the first one that I printed. I don't know whether it's good or not, but you know, it tells you the expenditures, tells you the specifics, the dollar amount spent, and then gives you a total for the month, right? This is more of a record keeping of cash flow, right? A true budget breaks it down and says, this is our gas for the month. This is what we have to spend. This is our food. And a good budget always has miscellaneous in there for overages.
Sure.
Right.
The unexpected costs that can arise over something.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of times we get the question, and I'll ask you, you know, we get the question of like, well, how do I budget for something that varies all the time? You know, like my electric bill can be $100 a month to $300 a month. Like, how do I budget for that, Adam?
Right. Yeah, and you know, usually for me, I would say go with the higher number, because then if it's not as high as, you know, $300 for a utility, you know that you've got a little padding built in there, and it's expected.
Yeah, and it's a good way to save money too, right? Right. If your highest of your 12 months is $300 and you budget for that, but you average $200, you're gonna have $1,200 at the end of the month, or end of the year, I should say. Which then what? Can either stay in there for emergency fund. Maybe it's the purchase that you put off earlier in the year,
right?
And you know now
maybe it's a contribution to an IRA.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, the end of the year contribution where you're trying to, you know, max your amount for the year.
Yeah.
That might be something that's available to you then.
Yeah, another suggestion I would probably make is the old credit versus debit card, right? If you're using a debit card, you're usually analyzing your finances a little bit more,
Yes.
right? Because that can, quote unquote, bounce,
Right.
right?
Right.
Credit, it could bounce, but usually your limit's so high that most people aren't spending up to
Right.
their limit,
They're not near it. Yes.
right? So, you part of your budgeting may be just switching to a debit card so that it forces you and your spouse to have discussions about where money's going, what's in the account, right? Because a lot of times people don't look at their bank account every day.
Right.
I mean, we do
Right.
usually as financial advisors, right?
Yep.
But most clients don't.
Yep.
So, that may be a good suggestion for a listener that's having trouble with credit card debt is maybe switching to the debit card so that they are more conscious of it.
Right.
And, it's the old analogy of, if you have a $100 bill in your wallet and you go into a convenience store, you're usually not buying a pack of gum with it.
Right.
So there's something psychological about saying, oh, this is $1.07 and I don't want to break a $100 bill.
Right.
Well, what people do, they'll pass it up. But if they have all singles in there, that $100 is gone by the end of the
Sure.
day or the end of the week,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Well, same thing with the debit card versus credit card, right?
Yep.
And the argument is, well, I'm going to miss out on my points,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, I think some debit cards have points, but most of them are credit based,
Right.
right? How many people do you know retired off of credit card points?
Yes, it's a sound plan right there.
It's a
It's a sound plan. You're making me think of this as well. Reminding me of this was, like Amazon, and they get their deals of the day. And again, it's very easy if you just say, "Oh, yep, click. Oh, my card's already stored in there. Click." But if you change that out with your debit card, that will give you the second thought in a world where we're trying to get to here, right? Is that second thought of, should I purchase this? Do I really need this, even though it's the deal of the day?
Yeah, and sometimes it's just the breather
Yep.
to say, you know what, I don't really need it.
Right.
Or let me shop it out first,
Yep.
see if I can find it cheaper or better, or let me budget it and buy it a month from now.
Right.
Right. And that's the problem we fight with as advisors is in our society. We're so ingrained to I have to have it now
Yeah.
because our neighbor
Mm-hmm.
had it now. And I won't use the analogy. Yeah, I will. Keeping up with the Joneses. I'm sure you've heard that 5 million times.
Once or twice.
I love how you coined that phrase. I mean,
Yes, it's an old family tradition.
there we go. But that's the problem in society today. And even our kids have that same mentality.
Yeah.
Right? They go into school, they see their friend has the newer backpack, the newer sneakers, or whatever it might be, and budgeting goes out the window.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And I know at least my kids occasionally, it's like, oh, why can't we get this? Or why don't we get this? It's like, okay, well, we're not budgeted for that right now.
Right.
Doesn't mean they can't get it.
Yep.
It just means, hey, okay, maybe later, if we know that's on the radar now, it's not,
But you just brought up another great point, which is, we're so often households aren't teaching budgeting to their kids. And, I know, as you said, I know my kids will come in and say, oh, can I get this game right now? And it's, no, not now. We're not doing that now. But
I love how when we ask you to clean your room right now.
right, exactly. Right. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
It's the opposite of that, right?
Yep. But the idea of teaching our kids how to budget gives a deeper understanding for when they get out into the real world of how they need to make sure that they have enough money to keep the lights on, pay their phone bills, those types of things that we do as adults. And, we don't, oftentimes people don't often think to teach these key financial factors.
And that's a good time, right? For a parent that hasn't done a budget, that's struggling with credit card debt, that's trying to get ahead of the wave, so to speak, right? It could be a golden opportunity that as you improve habits in your life that you're teaching your kids. Right? And that's pretty motivational. That helps you maybe stick to the budget. They say it takes between 13 and 21 weeks to create a good habit, to create a new habit. And that's along with destroying a bad habit. Right? So bad habit of overspending or whatever, it's going to take you, what's that? Ends up being 4 to 5 months to create and destroy an old habit and create a good habit.
Yeah.
That takes some consistency.
Right.
But if during that time you can educate your kids on it and know that they're going to grow up and they're going to be able to know what a budget is and understand a budget, I think that's pretty valuable. And sometimes that might be the motivation that a listener needs to, improve their family life.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Because most generations stay in the same level.
Yes.
It's not until a child, maybe through education or motivation or whatever that might be, says, look, I don't want to be in this situation anymore.
Right.
And then they work hard enough to get out of it.
Yep.
And part of that's through them learning how to budget on their own because their parents maybe weren't good at budgeting.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's the old adage, what do you think we are, the Rockefellers? You know, when people are talking about money. And
or in your case, the Joneses.
The Joneses.
Well, yes, we
Exactly.
are, Dad.
Yeah, we are. But, you know, that whole concept of how money is perceived, but also how it's managed. And again, we're not talking about investments necessarily today. We're talking about just the dollar and what it does for your household.
Yeah.
And the perception.
And I thought, you know, we joked around about envelopes and these being more for older people, but I actually just thought about it while you were talking. You know, you could budget through envelopes nowadays by just requesting printed receipts.
Yeah.
And you know, it wouldn't be a proactive, it would be a reactive budget where you take your receipts and you're putting them in here on your own and then totaling it up at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe putting limits on as far as how much you want to spend here and see whether you're over or under, you know, to analyze it. So, you know, yeah, we say that's maybe an old school, but you know, perhaps maybe that's a good way to itemize. It
is, and I'll tell you a story. I had a client who did not know what they spent their money on. So I asked them, I said, where do you put your keys when you come in from your garage? Well, I hang them right here on, you know, by the wall. And I said, okay, do you have a shoebox? An old shoebox? Yeah, I have a shoebox. So I said, what I want you to do for the next 4 weeks, for the next month, I want you to make sure you get a receipt for everything you purchase and then put it into the shoebox when you put your keys up at the end of the day so that you could track. And this is what they did. They then at the end of the month, we stacked out what their receipts were and what they were spending their money on. And it was kind of eye-opening for them because they didn't realize how much they were spending on coffee or going out to eat rather than making a sandwich for lunch. You know, those types of components that people just do habitually without tracking their cash.
Yeah, and so a lot of people may think that this episode is more basic, right? But we run into a lot of households where high income covers up massive mistakes when it comes to budgeting.
Yes. Yep.
Right? As long as the money's coming in, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it doesn't help the person become a better saver or build net worth.
Right.
All it does is cover up bad mistakes with money.
Yep.
Like maybe it's a household going out, you know, 26 times out of 30 times in the month for dinner.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, maybe they can afford that and maybe they can just put it on credit card and pay the credit card off and never pay interest. But when you look at their savings, most households can't keep up with that by the time that they go to retire.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and they're now, but now the hard part is now they're in a, 20, 30 year habitual pattern of spending at a certain level.
Yep.
And that's hard to come back off of.
Without having the basics of a budget, there's those people out there that they get a bump up in their pay and their salary. But guess what they're doing? They're spending as much as they're making. And it keeps going up and up and up. Like you said, and at the end, when they're ready to retire, they have nothing in savings. But with a budget, it helps you to track it and to say, okay, all right, now I can put more money over here into my savings, in my investments, into my retirement. Again, it's basics in the sense of at any level and at any income.
Yeah, and a couple key points before we wrap up is in your budget should be a category for saving, and it should be a category for 401k or retirement or maxing out a Roth, your investment goals as well.
Yeah.
Right? We always say the adage, pay yourself first.
Yep.
And that's really should be one of the first things on your budget is your future savings, your emergency money, your slush fund, so to speak, so you don't go in debt.
Right. The forced savings that gets, again, just builds good habits. If I'm counting it as a line, as an expense line that I have to pay, then I'm forcing myself to save.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that people can do to improve cash flow in the house, right? One is analyze all their subscriptions every year, right? Because there's a lot of subscription services that are $9 here, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
There's a million subscription services nowadays that people sign up for.
Yeah.
And they're too lazy. And I say that because I've done it before where I've wanted to cancel it and it's been 3 months before I canceled it because I was too lazy to stop the subscription.
Yep.
And that's what they bank on, right? They bank on the average person maybe 6 months to a year before they cancel it.
Yep.
And they've gotten 6 months or a year off of income off the person, right? So maybe analyzing your subscription every 6 months or every year and then switching your payments of insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance to annual, because the more you break down a payment, the more they charge you.
Yep.
On average, 8 to 10%.
Yeah.
So, you can shave off 8 to 10% of all your insurance expenses just by going to annual. And once again, getting ahead of that wave, so to speak, of spending and debt. And so that you're not like, oh, wow, this bill came due and I didn't know it.
Right.
Right. And if you have a large bill coming due, like school taxes or property taxes, maybe having it on your calendar so you know ahead of time, like, hey, whether you're on pace or behind pace.
Yes. Yep. The auto pays can hurt people who don't remember them. Like you said, my daughter wanted to watch a movie recently. The only way I could watch it for free was to do a 7-day trial on one of the streamers, and I immediately, as soon as the movie was done, I went in and canceled because I didn't want the whole subscription, but I knew that I would completely forget.
Yeah, how many people forget? And the one movie cost them $35.
Exactly. So it's like, okay.
I mean, you could have got at least one pack of gummies at the movie theater for $35.
Yep, one. Just one.
We used to laugh, right? When you're watching movies, at the beginning, they would show the popcorn and the soda, and you would see this bag of candy fill up like this. And we used to say, well, look, that's my entire college fund. 1 pound of candy at the store. Well, hopefully clients take this information. They're empowered by it.
Yep.
They shop out apps that they, can find that work for them. Maybe they delve a little bit more into their credit card in classifying their expenditures. Maybe they print out a worksheet. Maybe they get some old-fashioned envelopes and just get in the habit. But you can't do it without, in a married household, you can't do it without your spouse.
Sure. Yep.
So we encourage, sit down, have the hard conversation, and really understand 3 to 4 months to implement.
Yeah, it's going to take discipline, for people to form those new habits. But I feel, and sure as you do too, right? It's going to be completely worth it for them.
Yeah, we want clients to take a sigh of relief, not a sigh of pressure on them in their budget.
Yep.
And we want clients to be proactive in managing their budget, proactive in saving. And the only way that we can do that is through some psychological support of how important it is to a budget and motivation, right? So hopefully listeners are motivated a little bit by this, taking the reins, so to speak, of their budget. They can implement it. Please reach out to the Esli Group. We do have budgeting sheets. We do have a lot of different things, resources that we can help you out with. You can find us in a bunch of different formats. First and foremost, you can email us at the Esli Group. It's terrainvestors.com. You can find us at always yourtimeyourmoney.net for your net worth. There are consultation links on there. There's our phone number. You can get right on our calendar through Calendly on there if you'd like to schedule an appointment. And we're at 43 British American Boulevard in Latham, 12110, or 844-444-YTYM to schedule an appointment or consultation. So please like, subscribe, and share. And as always, it's your time.
Your money.